Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not really chasing the next big insight. We're actually dealing with the aftermath. We're
Mm.
looking at what happens after you have that genuine glimpse of clarity or freedom or, whatever you want to call it.
The breakthrough.
Exactly, the breakthrough.
Mm.
We've been handed these excerpts from a text called The Return, and it's all about that long, unglamorous process of bringing that truth back into your messy, ordinary life.
Yeah, this is really for anyone who went searching, found something really profound, and then immediately felt like they lost it.
Right.
The sources, they're written for the person who knows, without a doubt, that the seeing was real, but so is the suffering.
I think the most powerful part of the whole preface is where it just lays this central paradox bare. You had this incredible moment, you saw the machinery of suffering, the self became transparent, you were free,
You saw the whole game.
the whole game. And then the text asks, what did you do next?
And the answer is just so perfectly grounding, isn't it? And then you had to make dinner. The bills were still due. The world kept turning. The insight didn't magically fix your relationships or, pay off your debt. It just gave you a better view of the walls of the maze you're still in.
So the mission in this deep dive, really, is understanding that this is the actual path. It sounds like the book is pushing back against the popular idea of enlightenment.
Oh, it absolutely is. The sources are brutally honest. The spiritual path after the breakthrough, it looks less like climbing some glorious mountain peak and a lot more like returning to the valley with sore knees and no applause.
Right.
The work shifts. It's not about seeking it anymore. It's about living it. And that, it turns out, is much, much harder.
Okay, so let's unpack that return to the valley, starting with the immediate problem, which is stability. The text opens with what it calls the morning after. And it argues that the first thing you have to drop is the expectation that enlightenment is some permanent state you get to keep.
That expectation is maybe the single biggest obstacle to actually integrating anything. The sources are very clear on this. Enlightenment is not something you achieve and then possess.
Mm-hmm.
It uses this amazing analogy. It says it's more like a door that opens. You can walk through it, but you can also walk back.
And we all walk back.
We all walk back. The mind, the small self, it will reassert itself. It's what it does.
And when that happens, that reassertion, the immediate feeling is just profound failure, right?
Yes, and that's the feeling you have to challenge. You have to grieve the loss of what the text calls the fantasy of a finish line.
That's a great phrase.
It is, because that hope that one day you'd just arrive and stay there, that was the fuel for all you're seeking in the first place. And when that fuel is gone, you just feel exhausted, hopeless.
You have to find a totally different way to move forward.
A different motivation, one that acknowledges the breakthrough was just a glimpse of what is, always already the case, the ordinary reality that's right here, right now.
That brings us to what I thought was one of the most comforting lines in the whole thing. For anyone who feels that failure when the clarity fades, the text says, the one who forgets is not the one who saw.
That is such a crucial distinction. Awareness itself didn't forget anything. It can't. It's the small, conditioned self that reforms and then claims the seeing as its own achievement.
And then claims the forgetting as its own failure.
Exactly. The very impulse to grab and hold on to that moment of freedom is the grasper-keeper self that had to dissolve for the seeing to even happen.
So the slip isn't a disaster. It's just data.
It's valuable information, it's research, it's a revelation of what's still trying to hold on. Every time you forget, you get to see how quickly that old self rebuilds the trance. The sources say the rhythm of forgetting and remembering is the teaching.
So you stop trying to hold on?
You just get better at noticing when the clouds roll back in.
Okay, so as we move past that initial shock, the mind gets really clever. The sources shift to these more subtle traps that pop up, specifically something we often call spiritual bypassing. The mind literally makes a new self out of selflessness.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? You saw through the ego, and now the ego is rebuilding itself using non-ego parts. It's very clever. And the sources, they detail specific symptoms to watch for. One of the big ones is premature transcendence.
And what does that look like, practically?
It's the habit of, say, observing a really deep emotion like rage or grief from a safe distance. You kind of file it under the mental category of understood.
But you never actually feel it.
You never meet the feeling in your body. You skip the processing. You're using a concept of truth to avoid the messy reality of being human.
And the other trap is using that insight as a weapon, almost. I think the text calls it cruelty in spiritual clothing.
That phrase just sticks with you, doesn't it? It means wielding phrases like, oh, it's just your ego, or you're just creating your own suffering at someone who's in real pain.
That's not wisdom.
No, it's a defense mechanism. It's using your insight to distance yourself from the discomfort of their pain. The test the source offers is great, you ask yourself. What am I not feeling, and am I using this to connect or to distance?
That gives us a tool for some internal honesty. But what about when seeing the truth actually makes things worse? The text moves on to the dark night, and it frames it not as a poetic metaphor, but as a genuine clinical reality.
This is that period of existential breakdown that often follows the death of the old self, because you can't unsee the absurdity of the ego's game, but you still have to play it. You have bills to pay, a job to do.
You feel like a ghost in your own life.
Exactly. You get these really debilitating symptoms, a huge loss of motivation, depersonalization, and what the text calls existential vertigo.
Can you break that term down for us? Existential vertigo?
Sure. I mean, vertigo is dizziness, a loss of balance.
Mhm.
When the self dissolves, your whole orientation in the world goes with it. The groundlessness that was supposed to be liberating is suddenly just terrifying. You're spinning without a center.
So if you're in that state, how do you get through it without trying to, fix it?
The sources are really clear. Resistance just makes it last longer. The advice is to let it be a death. You have to allow the decomposition. This isn't a time for big projects. It's a time for survival.
So just basic maintenance.
Radical maintenance. Keep the body alive, eat, sleep, move. It's a passage you pass through, not a problem you solve with more thinking.
And that connects directly to the next big hurdle, the one in Chapter 5. The body didn't read the book. Your mind gets it, but your body is still running decades of old programming.
It's a huge realization. The mind and the nervous system operate on totally different timelines. Insight doesn't just trickle down into your body because the nervous system doesn't update from a new thought. It updates from a corrective experience.
And why is that? Why can't the mind just tell the body, hey, you're safe now?
Because the body's OS is based on survival signals, not logic. If you spent 20 years clenching your jaw when you were stressed, that's an automatic physiological program. You have to introduce new safe patterns through movement, breath, touch things that bypass the thinking mind.
And that healing is on a much, much slower schedule.
Infinitely slower. The sources say the body heals in spirals, not lines, and it warns you. It takes years, sometimes decades. Accepting that pace is it's vital.
Okay, now we move outside the internal world and into the relational field, what the sources call the others. Chapter 6 talks about the painful truth of the coherence gap.
The coherence gap is that experience of living with people, often people you love, who just don't see the same reality you do anymore. You changed, they didn't. And that friction, it can be a source of profound loneliness.
And the first and totally wrong impulse is to try and wake them up.
Yes, the text says to abandon the missionary position. The desire to wake other people up is almost always the ego in disguise, trying to validate its own experience, and it never works anyway.
So if you can't wake them up, what do? What are the tactics?
You learn to translate. Instead of using spiritual jargon, you meet people in their own framework. So if someone is anxious, you don't say, that anxiety is just an illusion. That just creates distance.
Right.
You translate. You say, it sounds like you're being really hard on yourself, or what do you need right now? You carry the deeper perspective in your presence, in your tone, not in the words, and you have to accept the loneliness that comes with it.
This changes everything about love and attachment, which brings us to Chapter 7, Love After Projection. There's the mutual dream, then disillusionment, and then this third stage.
The third stage is the hard part. It's choosing the actual person in front of you, the stranger, the flawed human who doesn't fit your ideal, and choosing them without needing them to complete you. Love stops being about fusion. It becomes about appreciation.
Is that kind of love less exciting?
Oh, absolutely. The text is very clear on that. It's way less exciting than the rush of the initial dream, but it's infinitely deeper. The final question it poses is, can you tolerate depth over excitement? Can you sit in the same room, each in your own world, and let that be enough?
And the ultimate relational challenge is in the chapter on children. That very specific pain of watching the machinery get installed in your own kid, knowing exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and the material is so compassionate about this. You will fail them. You will install conditioning. The goal isn't perfection. It's repair.
The rupture and repair cycle.
Exactly. Secure attachment forms because the child learns that disconnection is survivable. Your only real job is to give them the one thing you can control, your actual embodied presence when they need you.
Before we move on, we have to talk about the larger systems. In Chapter 9, the world that doesn't care that you woke up. You see the collective trance, but you're still stuck in it.
hmm And this creates what the sources call a genuine, appropriate heartbreak. You can't just pretend the systems don't exist. So the strategy requires radical honesty. First, you have to abandon the savior fantasy.
The idea that you can fix it all.
Right. That path only leads to burnout and despair.
So what's the alternative?
It's holding the tension of complicity, working for change while knowing you're embedded in the system that needs changing. You still have a bank account, you still pay taxes. The practice is to let the world be heartbreaking and to let your broken heart keep beating. You act from that open place, not from a place of purity.
This brings us to the final section, the ordinary. If the breakthrough didn't pay your bills, how do you handle Chapter 10? Work, money, survival.
Well, the spiritual ego loves to dismiss all that, right? It sees the material world as beneath it. But the Source has this great line, you cannot meditate your way out of needing food. The solution isn't detachment from the world, it's non-attachment while fully engaging.
That sounds like an impossible tightrope to walk.
Yeah.
How do you do both?
You show up, you do the work well, with integrity. But you don't attach your core identity or your worth to the outcomes, the promotion, the praise, whatever. You remember the role you play at work is just a costume you put on.
And take off when you leave.
And take off completely when you leave. You are not the costume.
That leads us right into Chapter 11, which feels like the real destination of this whole return journey, the sacred ordinary, where the final illusion to drop is the mind's division between spiritual and mundane.
Exactly. The book basically asks, if the sacred isn't right here in the daily maintenance of life, where could it possibly be? It uses this beautiful concrete detail. If it is not here in the soap suds, the folded towel, the onion being chalk, then it is not anywhere.
So the practice is just closing that gap, the gap between where you are and where you think you should be.
Precisely. The goal is to just fully be here. When you wash the dishes, wash the dishes. Suffering lives in that gap, and when the gap closes, what's left isn't some high-flying bliss. It's something much quieter, much deeper. It's sufficiency. This moment, just as it is enough.
As the sources conclude, they present two final, unavoidable truths: grief that has no object, and then, of course, aging, illness, and death. Let's start with that grief.
The grief that has no object is described as this wave of sorrow that isn't clinical depression. It's the natural, appropriate response to seeing the truth of impermanence. You're grieving everything all at once because everything is always passing.
So it's a sign that you're becoming more permeable.
More permeable, less defended. It means your heart is softening to reality.
And finally, facing the failure of the body itself. How does the text guide us there?
The comfort is in the realization that you are that in which the body appears. When the body fails, that awareness doesn't. And the core practice for this is to practice small deaths.
Every loss is a rehearsal.
Every loss, every ending, every change, it's all a rehearsal. The point is to face death now, to clarify what is truly essential while you still have the time and energy to live it. And the afterward just brings it all together perfectly. There is no neat conclusion. Nothing lasts, including insight. The rhythm of forgetting and remembering is the whole practice. The real challenge isn't to stay awake all the time, but to notice when you fall asleep and not make a problem out of it.
The pages close, but the practice doesn't. You close the book, you stand up, and there's dinner to make or a call to return or just the evening light coming through the window. That light right there is the teaching.
So if the ultimate truth here is that everything is the teaching and the ordinary is enough, we want to leave you with this to consider. The implication of genuine sufficiency. What fundamental need, the one that drove your initial seeking, that need for more or for different, can you finally today allow to dissolve just because you're already here?